Immediately before and even after these attacks, you've seen the left and their politicians, the Democrats, saying that like ICE is Gestapo, ICE is fascist. They're not going to back down. They have to be held accountable. The only thing that stops behavior is consequence.
That this is somehow creeping fascism in this country, like we didn't have an election where everyone voted for this to happen. Right, that we decided as a country,
a national conversation
that I don't know, just letting 20 million people walk across the southern border was bad public policy from Joe Biden. We had an election on that.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Ruthless Variety Program. My name is Josh Holmes, along with Comfortably Smug, Michael Duncan, and John Ashbrook, left to right across your radio dial. We're going to talk to you a little bit more about the, hard-to-ignore leftist violence. Another episode again yesterday at a Dallas facility. This is according to Fox News. Fair, balanced, and unafraid over there at Fox, and they tell us at least 3 people were shot, one of whom was killed in a shooting at the ICE facility in Dallas, Texas. A shooter opened fire in an unmarked van as it entered the facility. So the shooter also died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The most cowardly way out from these leftists' perspective. A federal source close to the investigation identified the gunman as Joshua John, 29. Now, we don't know at this very moment an awful lot more than that, other than to say that there was a graphic that was put out that had some anti-ICE messages found on the shooter's bullets. If you have a look at that. This morning, and this is... again, I think this is a Fox thing, but it's just before 7 a.m. local time.
Yeah, this is something that Cash Patel tweeted on it, right?
Oh, yeah. This is from Cash?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, this is from Cash. This morning, just before 7 a.m. local time, an individual fired multiple rounds at a Dallas, Texas ICE facility, killing one, wounding several others before taking his own life. FBI, DHS, ATF are on the ground with Dallas PD and state authorities. While the investigation is ongoing, the initial review of the evidence shows an ideological motive behind this attack. Surprise, surprise. Mm-hmm. And this is the photo. If you can pop that up one more time. One of the unspent shell casings recovered was engraved with the phrase anti-ICE. So there's going to be more updates on all of that. But again, this is something we've been talking about way too often, fellas. There is a leftist violent streak that has now an unmistakable repetition over a period of time that honestly, something needs to be done here.
And that's the thing, is there is an absolute pattern that's happening here. This is more than the general concept of like, well, it seems like there's a lot of leftist violence. Like, you've been hearing the discussion happening online, and you've seen the media try to like obfuscate and act like it doesn't exist, or put up some like left-wing Soros-funded think tank of being like, well, actually, there's 5,300,000 examples of right-wing violence every single day, and it's because they're counting like 2 people in a jail cell getting into a fight. Oh, that's right-wing. But this is even further than the general concept of leftist violence, because this is a very specific pattern that's starting to emerge, not just tied by ideology, but also in the behavior exhibited by these leftists. So could I get graphic 1A up, please? This is the AP headline about Luigi Mangione. You might remember the idiot who murdered the CEO on the streets of New York City. On his bullets, they were engraved with delay, deny, defend. The AP headline says, words on ammo and CEO shooting echo common phrase on insurer tactics. So they're trying to blame the insurer. So this is not only a pattern of a leftist lunatic carving into bullets, but the media trying to like obfuscate and cover for him.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that in all of this conversation, not just in this ICE shooting, but in the Charlie Kirk assassination or this Luigi Mangione thing, is we have to solve this problem. The Trump administration has to solve this problem. The FBI has to solve this problem because we do not have good faith arbiters of truth on the other side to stop the violence on their side.
No, and
I saw some of this stuff on social media here on this ICE shooting, and I was just so disgusted by it. The obfuscation that there are prominent Democrats, these never Trump fuckfaces, all of these people who are horrible human beings talking about, they're just trying to obfuscate the reality that this is a targeted attack on ICE officers, that the sort of stuff that they cheered on, since Donald Trump was inaugurated.
And motivated, to be honest.
And motivated these sort of attacks. And they're like, well, he shot into a truck, and I believe a detainee was killed. So who are we to know what the motivations of this were? And then I also saw a ton of traffic on Blue Sky and on Twitter from all these leftists being like, oh, the bullet said anti-ICE. Little too convenient, right? Like now we're in conspiratorial
Aaron
stuff.
Rupar was
Right.
putting that there, and it's like...
Which is the same thing they did on
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk's assassination, where they're like, oh, well, actually, I think it might be one of MAGA's own.
And that's the thing, is
Jimmy
like,
Kimmel.
Yeah.
The horrific murder of Charlie Kirk, that murderer also carved
Right.
leftist phrases into the bullets. You see this again in this attack on ICE. And here's the thing is, that Luigi example, I wanted to highlight it specifically because what was the response from the left and a lot of folks in the media, Taylor Lorenz especially? They celebrated that. They turned this guy into a hero.
They made him famous.
They made him famous. And just the other week when there was that hearing happening in New York City, outside of it, you had people dressed up like Luigi, like the Mario Luigi characters. You had we played the clip of the lady who was like, I'm married to an AI of Luigi. They turned him into a folk hero. So now you're seeing copycats because they saw that, this guy did this horrific act. He carved into bullets, and they
he's
turned
a
him
hero.
into a hero.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that left-wing violence is right in our face every single day. But the truth is it has been for quite some time. And it's not only the left-wing media who's been trying to cover for them. You have had weak Republicans who've been out there saying this is a both sides problem. And so now is the time when Republicans need to show some backbone and have some moral authority to say that the left is a problem in this country. Even The Atlantic this week ran a headline that said left-wing terrorism is out of control in this country. So if The Atlantic can write it, surely elected Republicans can find it within themselves to say that the left is a problem and we need to get to the bottom of it.
Yes.
Such a
$1,000,000%
good
yes.
point. I think there's 3 items to just quickly highlight. One, the casings piece, the engraving of the casings, the writing on the casings, very much a copycat situation. Nobody's really talking about that. It started with Luigi Mangione, obviously the Charlie Kirk case. Now we see it with this ICE situation. It is a common thematic. So even if you're unclear about who this cat is who pulled the trigger on this and murdered people, you can't be unclear about that in terms of a pattern. What else can you not be unclear about? Well, to date, there have been at least 14 attacks on ICE agents and ICE facilities since January 1 of this year.
Think about that.
Crazy.
14, right? So the backdrop of this is not a one-off event. This is not the random act of violence. This isn't some crazy individual. This is a pattern. 14 separate times. Suspects have used gunfire, Molotov cocktails, vehicles, fireworks, and knives to attack agents over the course of this calendar year. We're not even done with September yet. Here we are. I don't know if you guys remember the 4th of July in Portland, where the White House said deranged rioters viciously assaulted federal agents at an ICE facility. Officers were kicked, punched, and targeted with an incendiary device. That happened in Portland. We all kind of brush it off because we're like, yeah, that's what happens in Portland. Right?
And again, these are guys who are trying to keep us
They're just
safe.
doing their job.
They're doing their job. They're putting in their time, and you have these deranged leftists coming after them, and there's so much money, and we can get into this another time. The amount of money that's coming in from Soros and other foreign entities into these left-wing groups around the country. I think we'll probably get into that in another show. But think about it. These are foreign entities pushing against regular Americans working for ICE trying to do a job.
And the point is we need answers on that, right? You need answers on not just the organization, if there is one, of left-wing violence. And I think there are probably multiple. But you also need answers on the motivations of what gets people to where they're at. And we're going to get into that here shortly. But I will say, just as a secondary piece that's just happened here in the last 2 months, ICE agents in Texas. Targeted in 2 ambush attacks on July 4 and July 8. Notice the coincidence with the July 4 of the Portland attack. And this is according to Fox News. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents have been targeted at least in 2 ambushes in Texas back in July. The complaint charges each of them with 3 counts of attempted murder of a federal officer and 3 counts of discharging a firearm during, in relation to, and in furtherance of a violent crime. This one was particularly sinister, fellas. Immediately after the officer got out of his vehicle, one defendant positioned in a nearby woods allegedly shot the officer in the neck.
This is terrorism on American soil happening before our very eyes. I mean, if you think back to the early 2000s, there was no Twitter, there was no spread of tweet. I just saw some guy walk in to get flying lessons so that he could figure out how to fly into a tower. You know what? Like we are watching this play out in real time, and like if the government doesn't do something about it, it's going to get worse.
14 attacks.
Right.
14. You're 100% right, Ash. This is terrorism. And we are seeing it happen again and again and again and again. And what's it going to take? Because the message that's sent each time something like this happens, and there's no leadership from the Democrats. They're not going to be
quite the opposite.
They're not willing to even go as far as the Atlantic and be like, well, there's a little bit left wing. You saw immediately before and even after these attacks, you've seen the left and their politicians, the Democrats, saying that like ICE is Gestapo, ICE is fascist. They're not going to back down. They have to be held accountable. The only thing that stops behavior is consequences.
So we were talking earlier about the obfuscation that's happening and the fallout of this shooting at the ICE facility and sort of the Democrats that are running interference for what is clearly a targeted attack on ICE. One of the luminaries of the Democratic, journo world, Matt Iglesias. I don't know if you guys saw this tweet that he put out, and he's supposed to be like the brave guy who counters, liberal, conventional wisdom, right? Like he's the guy who's going to be the hard truth teller to the Democratic Party now with the fallout of Kamala Harris
I bet he's
losing
got a
the
hot
election.
take.
This is outrageous. You shouldn't shoot an ICE agent at ICE agents. Wow, brave. Which didn't happen here, or at immigrants in detention, which did happen here.
Oh my God.
But it's also fair to have a robust debate about all aspects of immigration policy. Can you imagine?
I mean,
you imagine like how hard your ass must hurt from sitting on that fence post.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
God.
Like I don't know. It's just both sides. Just
What a
it's just
piece of
not
garbage.
very clear.
Who can tell?
and here's so when we go back to that the instance that Holmes had just mentioned about the ICE agent who was shot in the neck, and this point I think is very important to highlight. It says law enforcement also found spray paint magazines containing ammunition and flyers stating "Fight ICE terror with class war" and "Free all political prisoners." A flag was found that read "Resist fascism, fight oligarchy."
Yeah, this was the July
where have we
attack.
heard that?
That's right.
This was the July attack,
Yeah.
and it just sounds pretty familiar. We have talked for a long time on this program about how because Democratic leadership is so weak, because they are just fundamentally out of touch with the base of the Democratic Party, there is nobody within the Democratic Party that has any sort of bravery whatsoever. They have no ability to lead a movement to a more productive standpoint. And what it leaves by omission is this growth in terrorism. And they have to get it from somewhere. Look, anytime you live in a free society at some level, there's a way to provoke people to unproductive means or a way to provoke people into productive means. And part of being an elected leader is to do the productive thing. Try to get people around the idea that you're trying to make progress and you're doing it civilly and you're doing all of the other things. But there are certain things that happen, and look, the left made a big push on Republicans in the wake of the 2020 election to suggest that Jan 6 and all of those things could have been prevented by a different set of rhetoric about stolen elections or whatever. Okay, let's just take you at your word on that, right? We differ a whole bunch about the sequence of events and ultimately what happened, whatever. But if you were right, if that's what your case is about what motivates masses of people who are angry, who are frustrated, who do not like the direction of the country into an unproductive, violent mean, if that's what their point was, what do we think of stuff like this just from this week from Gavin Newsom on Clip 1A?
And the ICE issue is alarming beyond words. It is the largest private domestic army of its type, police force anywhere in the world. He'll have 30,000 people that increasingly appear to be swearing an oath of office to him, not the Constitution of the United States. Again, wake up. That's happening in the United States of America. Masked men jumping out of unmarked cars, people disappearing, no due process. No oversight, zero accountability happening in the United States of America today. People ask, well, is authoritarianism, you're being hyperbolic? Bull, we're being hyperbolic. If you're a black and brown community, it's here in this country. I mean, if some guy jumped out of an unmarked car in a van with a mask on, tried to grab me, I mean, by definition, you're going to push back.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
All right. So, by the way, that was on one of our late night comedy shows.
Yeah.
That
I was laughing.
Lots of yucks.
Lots of yucks there. That's what our late night comedy, if you have any interest in revisiting that topic, that's what our late night comedy shows.
That was September 23rd. That's after numerous attacks had already happened. He continues to slander.
Dude, it was Tuesday. It was the very next morning that the ICE agents were attacked by gunfire in Dallas. The very next morning. We're talking about less than 12 hours after that thing was aired. That happened. Okay? Like, oh, that didn't seem like a very productive way to get people motivated. Maybe he's alone on that. No, 2A, please.
But as somebody who understands history, when I see ICE, I see slave patrols. Now, I never lived through the slave patrol period. But if you know the history of policing in this country, then you understand that they were born out of slave patrols.
That's such an insane take.
Okay. You know, and maybe Jasmine Crockett, look, she's insane. We love her here on this show because everything she says is like legitimately and demonstrably false and worth making fun of. But you can understand if there's an audience for that show that she's on, there's an audience for that understanding and conceptualizing of ICE, that it is a slave patrol. Like if you're a bona fide Jasmine Crockett fan, God help you. But if you are, and she says something like that, you can understand where it's kind of a life or death situation. You understand that you're fighting for something, maybe physically, maybe violently.
She's turning it up.
Because that slavery to I would say the vast majority of people in this country is something that you'd be like, I'll do. That's why we had the Civil War, folks. That's why we actually had the Civil War over what she's suggesting is happening with a law enforcement arm that is just doing its job. Understand how that gets...
Whose entry-level salaries, by the way, annual salaries, are about the same price as her middle school tuition.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, you're right.
He's not wrong.
All right, so, okay, maybe she's a crazy person. Maybe Gavin Newsom is just trying to get, his arms wrapped around like a Democratic nomination. Like, just politics, folks. How about another leader within the Democratic Party? Clip 3A, please.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense, not even a chance to kiss a loved one goodbye, just grabbed up by masked agents, shoved into those vans, and disappeared.
This is such insanity.
That's the vice presidential nomination for the 2024 election. Right there. That's somebody who you had close to 70 million people thinking was the right man to be number 2 in this country.
And you know what's interesting to me is they all describe the van. They all talk about the van, the van, the van. Well, what was shot on Wednesday morning? A
You're
van.
not wrong, dude.
Okay, so, all right, there's another guy, but we all know Walz is a little light on intellect.
And other things.
And other things. So maybe the next generation who is up and coming and has presidential ambitions, maybe they have a little something better for it. Clip 4A, please.
People are being grabbed and they're being thrown into vans. And that's different than questioning people. And oh, by the way, I want to ask a question to everybody who's listening and to you. Do you carry with you citizenship papers? How do you prove to somebody that you're a U.S. citizen? Your accent? The color of your skin? That's not the country we live in. You know, you shouldn't have to walk around with papers the way that they did in the early days of Nazi Germany to prove that you belong and that you're not one of them. And that is essentially the kind of country that we're becoming if you allow ICE to simply grab people after racial profile.
Again.
Yep. Nothing light about Governor JB Pritzker. The guy's probably the fattest governor on the entire planet.
But like, listen to what he's saying.
Ashbrook's dead on. The van.
The van.
They went back to the van, and they said, goes back to saying these are Nazis in this van.
Nazis, the van, grabbing people, pulling them off the street, having to prove that you're an American, none of which is in the remit of ICE.
And by the way, he's talking about whether we want people being stopped. I mean, I think Lake and Riley's family would have liked somebody to stop and kick that guy the hell out of our country.
Yeah, well, after they arrested him for other crimes, it would have been nice to actually prosecute him, for sure.
Well, yeah, and also, I just got to go into this little tirade on the whole thing because it's just so patently absurd to suggest that this is somehow creeping fascism in this country. Like we didn't have an election where everyone voted for this to happen. Right, that we decided as a country,
a national conversation
that I don't know, just letting 20 million people walk across the southern border was bad public policy from Joe Biden. We had an election on that, and for the Democrats of all people, you know, a party that let a geriatric guy with dementia pretend to be president of the United States and then ushered him to the side, didn't have a primary and made Kamala Harris the candidate, and then she got her ass handed to her. For those people to lecture us on democracy like they are the beacon of democracy, you want to know why all of these young people who are leftists, who have no leadership in the Democratic Party to look to, are on Discord servers feeling nihilistic and trying to shoot people. It's because they feel like they don't have a voice. And the Democratic Party has not been a Democrat party. They have not done democracy in a while. We're the only ones who did democracy.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. You want to know why they look disaffected? Why now they're turning to things like violence? The Democratic Party is to blame for that.
It is a rudderless ship, and they can provide no direction. And what has happened is abject violence that all of them duck. All of them pretend like it's not happening. All of them find excuses or try to shape media pieces. Like, this is happening.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
So wait till you get to this last one. This is Kamia Jayapal.
Oh, yeah.
This one.
Real cerebral, this one.
Yeah, she pushes an anti-ICE hoax just hours before shooting in Texas. The Jayapal tweet reads, if you want to put this one, ICE agents grabbed a 5-year-old girl outside of her home and held her screaming to coerce her father, who has been in the U.S. for 22 years, to be detained. This is cruel, disgusting, and must end. Trump is tearing families apart. Okay. So that's the take that she puts out to I don't know how many thousands of followers, but it's covered in a very meaningful way. And
NBC News ran with that even.
Yeah.
NBC News runs with it. Well, it's not true. Not even a lick of it is true.
Wow.
Not even a lick of it is true. If you look at the DHS response, what they say is these smears are sick. Obviously they are. Our ICE agents never used a 5-year-old girl as bait, as has been suggested. The criminal alien target of the operation, with previous arrests for domestic abuse, strangulation, and vandalizing property, abandoned that child that we're talking about. That child, abandoned the child in a car. Edwards Hip Meja, a criminal alien from Guatemala, ignored law enforcement emergency lights and darted inside his house, abandoning his 5-year-old daughter in the car. Officers helped rescue the child and called local police to report an abandonment. Stop the smear, stop the lies. Okay, so, I mean, look, again, what is your reaction if Jayapal is somebody who you look to for moral leadership and guidance?
Well, I don't think anyone looks to her, but what ends up happening is NBC reports this hoax, or Jayapal puts up that tweet, and it gets chopped up 6 ways from Sunday by Occupy Democrats and 10 other meme accounts on Facebook, and they feed this to a bunch of brain-dead leftists who never look for context.
They think they're at war.
They're not clicking an article and reading for all the information. They see this and they get outraged and outraged and outraged. And that's
they think they're at war.
And it all flows out there before they learn that NBC retracted the claim and posted a correction to the article.
They had to, because it was just false. But a million eyeballs saw it.
Yeah.
And a million people were convinced that they are in a very real war with ICE, that they are likely to use children to try to incarcerate people. I mean, it's a wild thing. So you like rewind the tape on all of this. Obviously, this has become a problem for a long period of time. But as it relates just to ICE and immigration, it did start in one place, folks. It did start in one place. Clip 5A.
The United States is running concentration camps on our southern border.
I mean, unbelievable.
And that is exactly what they are. They are concentration camps. The fact that concentration camps are now an institutionalized practice in the home of the free is extraordinarily disturbing. And we need to do something about it.
There it is.
That conversation fundamentally changed the Democratic Party.
In 2019, AOC goes out there and she puts that out. And some folks on the left are like, I don't know if this is, some Democrats are like, I don't know if this is a good idea. They didn't stand up, they didn't stop it then, and that became, okay, that's what we're rolling with. That's the Overton window shifting in real time for the left, where they're like, I guess we're going to call them concentration camps. And then the way that she closes it, she's two pieces of information she conveys. These are concentration camps. Number two, we have to do something.
Oh, what should we do?
What immediately follows is every one of that cavalcade of idiots on the Democratic primary stage in 2020, that included Joe Biden, were asked simple questions about securing the border. All of them kept their hands down on securing the border. All of them put their hands up on free health care, free government benefits,
decriminalizing border crossings,
decriminalizing and making sure that like people felt welcome and all of those kind of things. It's the Overton window that you talked about that completely shifted. And for those of us who are like not steeped in progressive politics, we look at that and we're like, my God, what are you talking about? It turns out the American people were kind of in that, by and large, in that same place too. But the progressive left had now had codification at the highest level of the Democratic Party that this is what's happening and we need to do something about it. So then you layer on all the stuff that we just talked about, from Gavin Newsom to Jasmine Crockett to Tim Walz to JB Pritzker to Jayapal, basically calling them Nazis, saying that they're stealing people, kidnapping them off the street.
Those vans.
All the vans, using children, try to bait people out of their house. Like, if you are in that constituency, and albeit it's a small one, but if you're in that constituency through a social media and through a choice of information flow, you think you're at war. You think this is a time for, you think maybe this is a civil war. Remember, we started the Civil War for something similar to something like this, right? A government has a fundamentally different point of view than what's right, and you fight. And they've done this. And now you have the obligation of people like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and the leaders of the Democratic Party to speak to it, and they refuse. They abjectly refuse. Instead, they work with headline writers at the Associated Press to ensure that they're not blamed for the neglect that they have put upon the American people.
Well said.
It is
scary.
It's sad, it's scary, it's true. But that's what we've got for you here on Wednesday with some tough news out of Dallas, Texas. I think we did it.
Yeah, I think so too. Absolute banger of an episode. Gentlemen, thank you so much to the minions. Remember, if you have not yet, hit that subscribe button on YouTube because it's more fun in video. So until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you Thursday. Stay ruthless.